Hi, welcome to Boss City. My name is Brian. Join me as I excavate the TV stars record vault and discover what happens when TV stars make records. As an aficionado of both classic TV and music from the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I was always delighted when the two universes would collide. I'm talking about our favorite TV stars venturing into a recording studio to lay down a vocal performance. In this episode, we're going to discuss records made by TV stars who were regularly appearing in a network TV series and were not previously known as a recording artist, specifically during the rock era. So that leaves out Desi Arnaz's 1953 hit recordings of the I Love Lucy theme and There's a Brand New Baby in Our House. But his co-star, William Frawley, is eligible. The incomparable Fred Mertz landed in record shops with his 1958 album Bill Frawley Sings the Old Ones on Dot Records. As Fred Mertz, Frawley performed My Melancholy Baby from the LP on a 1958 episode of the Lucy Desi Comedy Hour. While I Love Lucy did provide us with two TV/recording double threats, they were far from the only series with multiple songsters. For example, the mid-60s TV phenomenon Batman, ABC's campy, tongue-in-cheek comic book series, birthed four recording artists. There was Batman, Adam West, with his single on 20th Century Fox Records. Now, a key point is that many of these records by TV stars are products of corporate synergy, as the owner of this record company also owned the studio that was producing the Batman TV series. And this will come up again. West's entree to the music business was Miranda, where West explains to Miranda why he can't remove his mask. While the series was red hot, this record was ice cold and failed the chart. A similar fate awaited Robin, Burt Ward, as he released Boy Wonder, I Love You. Burt talks/sings his way through the strange song written and arranged by Frank Zappa. Frank Zappa? Yeah. Even more bizarre was the fact that it was produced by Tom Wilson, the acclaimed producer of classic albums by Bob Dylan, Simon and Garfunkel, The Animals, The Velvet Underground, and then Burt Ward. Over on A&M Records, Frank Gorshin and his Riddler persona kept us riddle solving on the record The Riddler, written by Mel Torme. And in his Frank Gorshin persona, he did a reasonable rendition of Never Let Her Go, written and produced by David Gates of Bread. Not to be outdone, Burgess Meredith as the Penguin waddled his way through The Capture and The Escape on ABC Paramount Records. The owner of this record company also broadcasts Batman twice a week. These records seem to be attempting the same campy tone of the series. Well, at least I hope that's what they were going for. Before we go any further, we should discuss Ricky Nelson, the king of TV actors making records. To impress his girlfriend, a 16-year-old Nelson recorded a cover of Fats Domino's I'm Walkin'. He sang the song on an April 1957 episode of Ozzie and Harriet, helping it and its B-side make the top 10. Being one of the first artists to successfully combine rockabilly, R&B, and pop in the early days of rock and roll, Ricky's records were blueprints for a lot of rock and roll to come. With a stellar band featuring James Burton and classic songs like Travelin' Man, Hello Mary Lou, and Poor Little Fool, Nelson built a reputation as one of rock's pioneers. Ricky gave lip-sync performances of his songs in nearly every episode of the final 8 seasons of The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, sometimes within the context of the story, but quite often they were just tacked on after the final scene. Over 50 top Hot 100 hits followed over the next 15 years. His late 60s, early 70s releases made him a chief innovator in the burgeoning country rock field. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1987, the only TV star to be so honored, well, as of yet. A TV series starring 6 kids would seem like fertile ground upon which to cultivate a recording artist, especially when the series is neighboring the Partridge family, who were taking up residence on the Billboard charts. ABC's The Brady Bunch did not fail to deliver. Now, there are a lot of releases to weed through, so let's just jump right into it. Beginning in 1971 with Merry Christmas from the Brady Bunch, TV's favorite blended family released 4 LPs on Paramount Records, whose company produced the show. The Meet the Brady Bunch LP made it to the number 108 on the charts. The next 2 titles, The Kids from the Brady Bunch and the phonographic album, just bubbled under the top 200 albums. Now these albums are a curiosity. Each LP featured a couple of original tunes intended as singles, heavy on production, with apparent contributions from the Partridge Family backing vocalists. The rest of the albums were filled with unison vocals of covers of current pop hits like Me and You, A Dog Named Boo, Baby I'ma Want You, Day After Day, and their Need to Hear It to Believe It rendition of American Pie. At the peak of the TV show's popularity, the Bradys also released an album by the unlikely duo of Chris Knight and Maureen McCormick. Now Chris is the self-proclaimed least musical Brady, and he hated singing, he despised the album cover, and refused to promote the Chris and Maureen album. Even though the Bradys were performing concerts during breaks from filming, none of their record releases seemed to click. Barry Williams' single of a Goffin King song, Sweet Sweetheart, Maureen McCormick's handful of single releases, including songs by Kenny Nolan and Mac Davis, nor Mike Lookinland's Love Doesn't Care Who's in It, which was co-written by the Pet Sounds lyricist Tony Asher. None of these made any waves on the charts. Noted record producer Neely Plum produced a bizarre anti-war song, How Will It Be, for his 12-year-old daughter Eve Plum, Jan Brady. In the song, Eve, as narrator, wonders what the future holds, lamenting the possibility of being drafted when she is older because the military would have run out of male soldiers. She mentions a friend, a 21-year-old girl who was killed in an anti-war protest. The song ends with Eve worrying that the world may not exist by the time she is 25. Wow, that's pretty heady stuff for a Brady to be thinking about. And as I listened to this 50 years later, the song scared me. When the family reunited for the Brady Bunch Variety Hour a couple of years later, Florence Henderson attempted to restart her recording career with a single release on ABC Records with Don't Say Goodbye. Sadly, record buyers didn't even say hello. More successful was the vinyl offerings from the Donna Reed Show. In 1962, Screen Gems Television, who was co-producing the show with Donna Reed's company, they owned a record company and thought that the young stars on the show could follow in Ricky Nelson's footsteps by recording songs that could be performed on the show. And right out of the box, the Stones' daughter, Shelly Fabares, topped the singles charts with her debut single, the million-selling Johnny Angel. Shelly described herself as a non-singer, but she was able to land 4 more records onto the charts, including Johnny Loves Me, which reached number 21. Her TV brother, Jeff, played by Paul Peterson, followed in his TV sister's footsteps with She Can't Find Her Keys, which was introduced in a dream sequence on the series. His debut charted at number 19, but his 4th follow-up became his biggest hit. He took the Barry Mann Cynthia Weil song, My Dad, all the way to number 6. He continued to release singles for the next several years, including 1964's She Rides With Me, a song co-written and produced by Brian Wilson. It, however, like most of his post-1962 releases, failed to chart, but the song was notable for being one of the first uses of a Leslie speaker on a pop record. Bobby Sherman used his exposure from his role in TV's Here Come the Brides to launch a string of hit records and a brief run as one of the 70s biggest teen idols. 1969's Little Woman reached number 3 on Metro Media Records. Easy Come, Easy Go, La 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 If I Had You, and Julie Do You Love Me all reached the Billboard Top 10 as well. Besides taking up a lot of prime real estate on teen magazine covers, he made Chokers for Men cool for a minute. 3 of his LPs made the album Top 20 and were certified gold. And just as his career was transitioning from cooling off to ice cold, he starred in the Partridge Family spinoff Getting Together that vanished after only 14 episodes, after which his chart life also disappeared. Sherman's Here Come the Bride's TV brother, David Soul, had to wait until his stint on Starsky and Hutch for his recording career to ignite. You know, Soul actually began his career in 1966 anonymously singing songs on the Merv Griffin Show, wearing a black mask. He was billed as the covered man. His covered man singles were produced by Tom Wilson on MGM Records, but they failed. But the attention that his covered man stunt generated led to acting roles. But it was his 1976 recording of Don't Give Up on Us on Private Stock Records that brought recording success for him, as it reached #1 on the singles chart. Written and produced by hitmaker Tony McCauley, who provides Soul with a song that is a great fit for his expressive voice. Evidently, Hutch was a singing cop, as he performed this and other songs on the Starsky and Hutch series. Although 2 of his follow-up singles found success on the AC charts, and the single Silver Lady reached #1 in the UK, he is considered a one-hit wonder in the US. Space may have been the final frontier, but terrestrial recording studios are where 3 Star Trek stars boldly journeyed during the series run. In 1968, Nichelle Nichols, who played Lieutenant Uhura, signed to Epic Records and released Down to Earth, which contained the single Know What I Mean? Neither of those releases got off the ground. On the other hand, Leonard Nimoy presents Mr. Spock's Music from Outer Space on Dot Records in 1967, fared better, reaching number 83 on the charts. This LP features Nimoy's space-age narration over music tracks with space sound effects. For some reason, he also sings 2 unrelated Broadway show tunes. A Visit to a Sad Planet was released as a single, reaching number 121 on the Billboard charts. A follow-up album sold well enough to reach number 97. However, his other releases did not live long and prosper. That brings me to Captain Kirk and his debut album. Although it did not chart, it is probably the most famous or infamous Star Trek TV star record. Released in 1968 by Decca Records, William Shatner's The Transformed Man contains instrumental backing to Shatner's monologues from classic literature, paired with lyrics from pop songs that are supposed to thematically complement one another. It is so hard to describe because this could be an imaginative yet self-indulgent, over-the-top endeavor, or the worst album by a TV star, or it could be the greatest thing you've ever heard. But before you die, you must hear his covers of Mr. Tambourine Man and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Now, let's travel from outer space to Hooterville, a pretty far out place itself. If you were hanging out at the Shady Rest in Petticoat Junction between 1963 and 1970, you would have found a whole group of TV stars making records. In March of 1964, as Beatlemania was sweeping the nation, Petticoat Junction featured an episode where the Bradley sisters, at the time consisting of Jeannie Riley, Pat Woodall, and Linda Kay Henning, along with Sheila James Zelda from Dobie Gillis, formed a Beatles-style group. They wore Beatle wigs, called themselves the Ladybugs, and sang I Saw Him Standing There on the show. Amazingly, 2 days before this episode, the 4 Ladybugs appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show, lip-syncing and miming to the song. This was a few weeks after the Beatles' historic appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show, so Ed was trying to keep the Beatles afterglow alive with Beatle-related acts, so even the Ladybugs got an invite. As music continued to feature on the Petticoat Junction series, the stars began making records. In 1965, Pat Woodall, the first of 2 actresses to play Bobby Joe, released What Good Would It Do on Colpix Records. And even though Uncle Joe was moving kind of slow, Edgar Buchanan found time to record a 45 for Dot Records entitled The Phantom 309. Over the course of the series, there were 6 different actresses who played the three Bradley sisters. The longest running trio was the grouping of Linda Kay Henning, Laurie Saunders, and Meredith McCrae, who made several trips to the recording studio from 1967 to 69. First, they recorded as solo artists with Laurie's Lonely Christmas on DG Records and Meredith's Who Needs Memories of Him on Capitol Records. The trio then recorded several songs together for Imperial Records, and they were billed as the Girls from Petticoat Junction. But only 2 singles were released from those sessions. I'm So Glad That You Found Me, which they performed on the TV show, and the Neil Sedaka, Howie Greenfield song, Wheeling, West Virginia. Among the unreleased tracks was Linda's rendition of Up, Up, and Away. And, there's an internet myth circulating that says that this version was recorded before the classic Fifth Dimension hit version of the same song. However, it seems unlikely, as the Fifth Dimension sessions for the song seem to predate Linda's recording. The girls also performed on other TV shows and made appearances at state fairs and nightclubs, but none of their records charted. Though we can rest assured that they were smash hits in Hooterville. Before we leave Petticoat Junction, we should mention other Hooterville residents who ventured into that busy recording studio in TV land. Mike Miner, who played Steve in the series, also was an aspiring singer, and he sang many times on the Petticoat Junction show. And he released several records during his stint in Hooterville. Most notably, This Is Mike Miner for Dot Records. Even Floyd and Charlie, the engineer and conductor of the Cannonball train, displayed their vocal chops on record. Ruth Davis and Smiley Burnett released a train-related song entitled Steam, Cinder, and Smoke in 1964. They also performed that song on the Petticoat Junction series. Lastly, we have Oliver Douglas from Green Acres, played by Eddie Albert. The Eddie Albert album was released on Columbia Records, also owned by the same company owned CBS, which broadcast Green Acres. Well, the Eddie Albert album was released in 1967 and featured Eddie's version of the Green Acres theme, as well as covers of Blowing in the Wind and Homeward Bound. The LP didn't chart, even though it was produced by Bob Johnston, the famed producer who worked with Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, Johnny Cash, Simon and Garfunkel. Maybe they just needed to hire Mr. Haney to promote the album. The Beverly Hillbillies were also friends with the citizens of Hooterville and enjoyed recording careers as well. The most notable entry into the Clampett catalog is the Whole Cast album, which featured Buddy Ebsen, Irene Ryan, Max Baer Jr., Donna Douglas, with Nancy Culp and Raymond Barry appearing in character and in song on the Beverly Hillbillies, featuring the cast of the CBS television network series Album on Columbia Records in 1965. Now, Buddy had recorded his take on the Ballad of Jed Clampett the previous year with no luck on MGM Records. But he tried again in 1965 with the Buddy Ebsen Says Howdy album on Reprise Records. On it, he covered several Hank Williams songs, such as Your Cheating Heart. Irene Ryan, in her Granny persona, recorded a novelty song called Granny's Miniskirt. The interesting thing about Granny is that 2 years after the cancellation of the series, a single entitled No Time at All, produced by Bob Crewe and credited to Irene Granny Ryan, was released by Motown Records. Yeah, Motown Records, pretty wild. As popular as the series was at the time, and as rich as the Clampetts were, that did not translate into record sales for the Clampett clan. As a series about 1950s teens, music played a big part in ABC's hit series Happy Days. Although Richie and friends formed a band and performed often on the show, all the records released by Happy Days actors were solo efforts. Ralph Malph, Donnie Most, was first out of the gate with his self-titled LP and single, All Roads Lead Back to You, on United Artists Records. That was in 1976. The album of Pedestrian Pop did not chart, but the single did eke out a number 97 chart showing. Notably, a lot of Most's later career has been devoted to music, with recordings and concerts featuring music from the 40s and 50s, styles that are much better suited for him. Potsy, Anson Williams, introduced his debut Chelsea Records release deeply on a 1977 Happy Days episode. Even though Happy Days was the #1 TV series at the time, his song, severely overproduced, reached only number 93 on the Billboard charts. Chachi also displayed his vocal chops on the show and on vinyl, as Scott Baio released a self-titled disc on RCA Records in 1982. The LP reached number 181, and he performed songs from it on the episodes of Joni Loves Chachi, the short-lived Happy Days spin-off, where he played an aspiring pop singer. He recorded a 1983 follow-up, The Boys Are Out Tonight. The boys or girls, however, were not out to buy this non-charting record. The RCA Corporation owned the NBC TV network and RCA Records, so it made perfect sense for the cast of NBC's top-rated shows to record and release albums on RCA. It started in 1962 with the Ponderosa Party Time LP that featured all 4 Cartwrights in character, taking turns on lead vocals and singing together on 2 tracks. They were so rich that evidently they were able to afford recording equipment years before it was invented. This album, which featured traditional songs like Miss Cindy and Skip to Malou, spent 9 weeks on the Billboard LP charts, peaking at number 49. This led to a Christmas album the next year, which was even more popular. So of course, individual solo LPs and singles from the Sons, Dan Blocker, who played Haas, Pernell Roberts, Adam, and Michael Landon, Little Joe, were released but did not dent the charts. One of Landon's singles was written by David Gates, to no avail. Lorne Greene, who played Ben, showed his son how it's done, as his 1964 solo album, Welcome to the Ponderosa, contained the mostly spoken word single Ringo, which caught the fancy of record buyers and became a huge hit. The song reached #1 on the Billboard charts. So of course, more Lorne Greene vinyl emerged. However, only a 1965 Christmas album sold well enough to chart. You know, these records are a time capsule of that era. Fun at the time of release, but have not aged nearly as well as the TV series. One of the funny characteristics of the Gomer Pyle character on the Andy Griffith Show was his singing voice. Gomer would speak in a high voice with a southern drawl, but sing in a deep, rich baritone. So when Jim Nabors was spun off onto his own show, Gomer Pyle U.S.M.C., in 1964, he began a recording career on Columbia Records. His debut album was Shazam! Gomer Pyle U.S.M.C., containing novelty songs sung in his Gomer Pyle speaking voice. Most of the songs were by Roger Miller or David Gates, but it flopped. As he began to use his baritone voice while singing on the TV show and then on record, his recording career flourished, as his next 13 releases made the charts, with 3 of them achieving gold status. Those albums covered pop, country, and gospel and middle-of-the-road material, but no more novelty. Jim left Gomer Pyle while it was the #2 show in the ratings to star in the Jim Nabors Hour, where he sang a bunch of songs each week. Even more Jim Nabors music. Not only did Patty Duke do double duty portraying 2 roles, you know, the identical cousins thing, on the Patty Duke Show, she moonlighted as a pop singer as well. She peaked with her first single, Don't Just Stand There, on United Artists Records, and that reached number 8 in 1965. The follow-up, Say Something Funny, also made the top 40. Several singles and multiple albums followed. Patty's effectiveness on vinyl, like so many TV stars making records, was totally dependent upon the right material with the right arrangement. Some of her efforts sound like fun 60s pop, and yet some do not show her in the best light. Before she received her angel's wings, Cheryl Ladd was a pussycat, as in Josie and the Pussycats. She was the singing voice for Melody on the Hanna-Barbera animated series and on the Capitol Records albums and singles, and some of them on the back of cereal boxes. Following her debut on Charlie's Angels, she made the logical return to the recording studio, emerging with a self-titled album and a hit single, Think It Over, which reached number 34 in 1978. Her time in the music spotlight led to several network TV music specials. However, her chart presence was short-lived. Bruce Willis, basking in the glow of Moonlighting, recorded The Return of Bruno for Motown Records in 1987, featuring an impressive lineup of backing musicians, including both the Temptations and the Pointer Sisters on backing vocals. Willis's debut reached number 14, going gold. The single, Respect Yourself, peaked at number 5. The Under the Boardwalk single, which was the follow-up, missed the US Top 40, but charted at number 2 in the UK. His recording career petered out, and his second album failed to chart. He was able to replace that side hustle with a long and lucrative movie career. We'll focus on the Partridge Family records on a future episode, because like the Monkees, those recordings were part of the show. This video is focusing on actors who were hired as actors, and their records were a later secondary concern. However, the Partridge Family gave birth to 2 recording artists outside of their family records. First, of course, is David Cassidy. Now, he was a hugely underrated pop singer. And in addition to singing lead on all of the Partridge Family records, he launched a solo career that did achieve a brief period of great success in the U.S. on Bell Records, a subsidiary of Columbia Pictures, who produced the series. David went gold with his top 10 cover of the Association classic Cherish. He delivered 3 more top 40 hits and 1 gold album. He sold out multiple nights at huge venues like Madison Square Garden and the Houston Astrodome. His stateside solo success lasted less than a year, but his solo career was stratospheric for about 5 years in the UK, scoring 9 top 20 singles, 4 top 10, and 2 of those reaching number 1. During this period, he released 5 hit albums in the UK, 4 reaching the top 10, and 1 going all the way to number 1. The song One Last Kiss, featuring George Michael on backing vocals, returned Cassidy to the UK top 10 in 1985. And in one of the longest gaps between top 40 hits in US chart history, David returned to the US charts in 1990 with the number 27 song Lying to Myself, 18 years after his last solo hit. 8 years later, he enjoyed another brief musical comeback with No Bridge I Wouldn't Cross, which reached number 23 on the AC charts. As hot as David's recording career was, his TV brother Danny's album and singles could not have been colder. Like the other Partridge kids, Danny Bonaducci did not contribute to the Partridge Family recordings. Danny admits that he is not a singer. That, however, did not prevent Lion Records, a division of MGM Records, from signing the talented young actor and hustling him into the recording studio. In early 1973, his self-titled LP was released. 2 singles briefly were in record bins, Dreamland and I'll Be Your Magician. But no amount of magic could compel record buyers to fork over money for these records. The final season of the Partridge Family introduced a young 5-year-old singing neighbor, played by Ricky Siegel. In 10 episodes, Ricky, for no apparent reason, would wander into the Partridge home and warble a song written by his father. Bell Records released the songs on an album produced by Wes Farrell, who also produced the Partridge Family records. And Ricky's album also featured contributions by the Wrecking Crew. Ricky was cute, but the record was not cute enough and failed to chart. Following in the footsteps of his brother David, Shaun Cassidy parlayed his fame from co-starring as a singing teenage detective in the Hardy Boys mysteries into a hugely successful and yet very brief teen idol singing career on Warner Brothers Records starting in 1977. In just 14 months, Shaun released 3 gold albums and 3 gold top 10 singles, The Do Run Run, That's Rock and Roll, and Hey Deanie. After one more top 40 hit, it was all over. His final album, produced by Todd Rundgren and featuring Utopia, was a dramatic change of direction from the slick teen pop dominating his catalog. The album Wasp contained new wave and power pop covers of rock classics like Bowie's Rebel Rebel and The Who's So Sad About Us. As bold as adventurous as it was, it failed to return him to the charts. In the 50s, Warner Brothers were among the first movie studios to produce shows for television. As their shows succeeded, Warner Brothers formed a record label and their TV stars began recording records. The first release from 77 Sunset Strip was an album featuring instrumentals from the TV score. And then, Efren Zimbalist Jr. released a Christmas single in 1958. His co-star, Roger Smith, recorded a whole album entitled Beach Time. Its title track reached number 64 on the Billboard charts. The two detectives were no match for the show's parking lot attendant named Kookie, Ed Kookie Burns. His novelty song, Kookie Kookie Lend Me Your Comb, became a huge hit, helping elevate his role on the show. The single reached number 4 on the charts in 1959. Featured on Kookie's big hit was Connie Stevens from 77 Sunset Strip's sister show, Hawaiian Eye. She reached number 3 on the singles chart on her own with 16 Reasons in 1958. On the cover art, they sure wanted to make sure that record shoppers realized it was Cricket from Hawaiian Eye performing on the LP. Releasing 16 singles for Warner Brothers through 1966, only a few charted. In 1970, famed Philly producer Tom Bell produced some unsuccessful singles for Connie on Bell Records, including the original version of Betcha by Golly Wow, also known as Keep Growing Strong. 2 years later, he would produce the top 10 cover by the Stylistics with an almost identical arrangement. Connie was also featured on the Hawaiian Eye music score album. Her Hawaiian Eye co-stars also had a go as recording artists. Robert Conrad released several singles for Warner Brothers, with only Bye Bye Lady charting on the Bubbling Under chart. The more popular actor, Troy Donahue's singles failed to chart at all. Richard Chamberlain, the star of the MGM series Dr. Kildare, took his turn at the microphone and scored 3 top 40 hits in the early 60s. He was recording for MGM Records. His rendition of 3 Stars Will Shine Tonight, the theme song from his Dr. Kildare series, landed in the top 10. The B-side of one of his failed singles from 1963 was revived by another artist in 1970 as the Carpenters transformed the Bacharach David Close to You into a classic #1 hit. The vault containing the recordings of TV stars is vast and expansive, so we haven't even begun to scratch the surface of the interesting contents inside. So we will be doing a lot more excavating in future episodes. Oh, by the way, on a previous episode, we did look at pop stars acting on TV. Just click on the link in the description to take a look. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave any questions, suggestions, or comments you have down below in the comment section. And while you're at it, please like and subscribe. Take care. Until next time, I'll be in the desert on a horse with no name. Bye for now.